Good morning. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Bob Hoeft and serve as the research coordinator for the NREC program. NREC, to me, is one of the best, it is the best program that has existed during the time period that I've been involved with soil fertility in 3 or 4 different states over nearly a 40-year time period. It gives us an opportunity to do things that we've never had before. So I'm pleased with it, I'm very proud of it, I'm excited about it, and what will transpire with this program over the coming years. For those of you that may not be familiar with NREC, in 2012, the Illinois legislature, passed the enabling legislation for the program. It created a system where an assessment of 75 cents per ton is collected and is available for NREC research. That bill was signed into being in August of 2012, and in 2013 the first proposals were accepted and funded and put into operation. Well, did I click this? Why NREC? Well, there are 2 real driving factors here. Supposedly, by 2050, we're going to double the population in the world. That means a lot more people to feed. And we need to start now if we're going to produce enough food to feed that many people by that point in time. Secondly, while we've always had a concern about the environment, that concern is elevating. Illinois EPA is developing the Illinois nutrient loss strategy. They've released the preliminary copy of that. And if you haven't seen it, I would encourage you to take a look at that document, because it talks about what Illinois agriculture can do to reduce nutrient loss. I'll show you that in just a second. Well, let's see that now. I didn't put them all up here, but they're suggesting if we reduce N rates to the current recommendation on 10% of the land, will reduce nitrogen loss by 10%. Using an inhibitor with all fall applied N would reduce it another 10%. And cover crops, it's projected on all tile drain acres would reduce that N loss by 30%. Now, these numbers may or may not be accurate. They don't have a lot of research data behind a lot of them, I don't think. And so what the NREC program is really aiming to do is to get ground truth on this. How do these numbers compare? How does actual research data compare to what is projected here? In the last few weeks, another, I think, major issue has developed in Iowa. The Des Moines Water Works is considering, and in fact, I think they voted to do it, to go ahead and file suit against individual producers for contamination of water coming into the, I forget what the creek is out there, but feeds the water supply. You know that Des Moines has had for many years a system to remove nitrates out of the water coming in whenever those nitrate concentrations were above the 10 part per million standard. That is a very costly venture for the waterworks company. Now, as an aside, what I find interesting is what they do with the nitrates when they take them out. They put them back in the river on the other side of the plant so that somebody on downstream, unless the water gets diluted, somebody else downstream is going to have to take them out again. But that's what's allowed, and it's what occurs. But these kinds of suits are going to change how we do business considerably if they're successful with them. Now, we've been operating for 3 years. We've just recently, like in fact last week, the NREC Council voted on this year's projects. We've had roughly 30 projects every year. Now, the 30 projects include the renewals, so it's not a total of 90, but it would be a total of, I don't know, somewhere around 55 to 60 projects that we've had submitted to us. Out of those, each year we've funded, or they have funded, 20 to 25% of the projects coming in. So it's a pretty high funding rate relative to most granting agencies. It seems low if you're looking at it that only 1 out of 4 gets funded, but the council is being very selective in what they're putting forth for funding. And they are funding a number of projects very well. This doesn't mean that those that didn't get funded aren't good projects. It's just that we ended up running out of money before that point in time. Of those, 8 of them have been nitrogen related. It's actually even more than that. They're nitrogen related in terms of crop production, those 8. There are 2 more down here that we're looking at soil nitrogen. Those should all be lumped together in reality because they're going to look at crops as well. Cover crops, either in total or in part, 5 projects have information being gathered on the impact of cover crops. There are 3 educational programs ongoing. One of the first projects ever funded was the ammonia safety program, which is an educational program. That's the only project completed at this point in time. And it's being used all across the Midwest and further on beyond that. There's also a CCA program that's been proposed on the 4 Rs, in fact, certification in 4 Rs, and you'll be seeing more on that in the near future. I mentioned the soil nitrogen. We've got to start identifying new ways to help producers determine how much N they need. Phosphorus, we haven't had a lot of proposals in, but we did have 2 in, and I'll talk about one of those in just a minute.